Good morning from Australia, Nikki. Welcome to the Jessica Pinelli podcast.
Hi, thank you. All the way from Vancouver. So we're kind of on like opposite sides of the world here.
Complete opposite. I think you are my first Canadian that I'm interviewing this year, which is super exciting. And I said this to an American the other week. It always feels like I'm in the future whilst I'm interviewing you guys.
Yeah, I guess, hey, it's like you're like a full day ahead of me. That's so weird
Yeah.
to think about.
What's the
Wow,
time there
that's
for
so
you now?
cool. So it's Wednesday at 2 p.m.
Oh my goodness. It's Thursday, 7 a.m. for me. That is
Oh my
wild.
God. You are literally in the future.
That is
Anything I should
wild.
know that happens tonight?
Nothing exciting so far. Future updates from Australia.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on. I'm super excited. We connected over Instagram because I tagged you in an Instagram that was inspired by one of your TikToks that you stitched. That I have your TikTok up. I can see it's hit 1.9 million views. I'm very excited to go into it and the essence and your work. And after I saw that stitch, I started to stalk you and I was like, I love exactly what you're about and everything you share as a therapist. But I want to dive into that stitch first. And for everyone
Mhm.
that hadn't seen my stories, doesn't know what I'm talking about, Nikki stitched a TikTok of, I'm going to read the exact TikTok actually. It was a
Mhm.
woman in a car and she's vibing along and it says, no one, me as a therapist. Oh, it just went else. Me as a therapist. Have you ever ended up going for a drive while blasting 2000s music? And Nikki stitched it, the reason behind this, which I really want to get into. And when I watched this, I was like, this is it makes sense, but it's so profound because for me as a millennial, putting on that 2000s R&B, blasting it in
Mhm.
my office or while I'm going for a walk or while I'm driving is so therapeutic. So where does this come from? Why does it feel so good for us to put on our old songs that we love and maybe don't listen to as much anymore? And it gives us that good feeling.
Yeah, it's so funny because there were so many comments on that video that were like, "Oh my God, I do this all the time," or like, "I'm already doing this. I already know why. Like, I already know that that's helpful." But it's so cool to see like the neuroscience behind it and like actually why that's happening because I think that's why the video went so viral is because it relates to so many people. Like so many people were like, "Oh my God, yes." Like when I go into my car and I put the music on and I scream and I let down the windows, like it's healing. You can like feel
Mm.
the emotions move through you. And so, I mean, researchers have been going at this for a while and they do a lot of work with understanding how music affects us and how it actually intertwines in our brain. So what they found with neuronostalgia, and that's like what I enlightened in the video, I was like, this is neuronostalgia. Like our music actually binds to our brains as teenagers and early 20s stronger than it will ever bind in our adult life. And this is largely due to the fact of brain development at that time. We go through such an intense brain development in our adolescence. And during that time, we're like forming parts of our like identity, our sense of self, who we are, emotions, memories, like things are really getting embedded. And with music connects to our bodies on so many different levels, like the actual music itself, the tone, the beat, but the lyrics and what the artists are speaking to, and then the memories that are attached to that. So music will light up like our brain's pleasure or reward center for anybody, like anybody across the lifespan, it'll do that. But for teenagers and for early adults, and this goes, into your early 20s, it's more of like a fireworks show, like it's lighting up like fireworks in there and it's getting embedded into our identity, our sense of self, emotion, experience. And that's what triggers like the nostalgia and the feel good and like the dopamine when we go back and listen to that because our bodies remember. Our bodies are so smart. And when it connects to our brains, it's just like, oh, this takes us back to that place. This takes us back to when we were like teens and early 20s. This takes us back to those experiences. And it can just kind of like, it feels euphoric almost when that happens. I don't know if you felt that too, but it's like, okay, this is just really, really helpful in those times.
Yeah, the euphoric, that word, I think describes it perfectly. And I guess as everyone was relating to in the comments, it's this understanding of, yes, I get this, but I love the way that you explain the neuroscience and what really is happening in our brain and why it feels so good for us. And I think that one of the reasons why I started to have a stalk of your profiles and really connect to the things you're saying is you have such a different approach as a therapist to explaining relatable topics in a really easy and digestible way. But I want to go back to before we dive in deeper, when did you become a therapist? What was this journey to you becoming a therapist and why?
Mhm. Yeah, so I graduated grad school in 2020. So I've been like a licensed practicing therapist for 4 years now. And before that, I was always in mental health. So I've been in mental health since 2011, so 13 years now. When people ask me why I wanted to become a therapist, I kind of have like two different directions. I've always been a helper. So I think like a lot of therapists naturally have that like I'm a helper kind of person. You kind of fall into that role naturally. But then I also had a really hard experience in my like mid 20s when I was in like a really abusive domestic relationship. And leaving that relationship really sparked me into being like, who am I? What am I doing? What do I want in my life? And that was actually the first time I went to therapy. And then that was like, okay, I know that when I do this work, I also want to help other people do this work, but I want to do it differently. Like, I want to be able to make it more normal, more inclusive, more accessible, more like understanding. I didn't like kind of that like stuffy, rigid, like clinical, very like I was like, I don't really connect to this. I connect to just like being a human and let's figure out like why life is hard and how we can get through it and how we can already do it. So yeah, I think naturally I came about as like a helper myself, but then through that like really difficult experience of me learning how I had to do the work myself, I was like, ooh, I want to help other people do this and I want to do it a little bit differently. So that kind of is what set me on that path.
So, when you were practicing and you were learning, obviously, what comes with that is the kind of rigid concepts and frameworks, and the way that you maybe see I want to put in quotation marks, traditional therapist who is teaching and learning these things. Where did you start to teach in the way that you currently teach? And I know your tagline is bridging the gap between therapy room and your real life. What does that mean for you?
Mhm. Yeah, that it's kind of funny. I just like randomly thought of that one day because I was like, what I felt working in the field was people, it's like they go away from their normal life to work on their mental health. It's like, oh, I have to like
Mm,
go to the therapy room or I have to go see a psychologist or I have to leave my life to like deal with this issue and then I come back. And I was like, that doesn't feel connected to me. And it didn't feel like it was like a fluid, accessible, inclusive, modern approach. It felt very like you go away to do this and you come back and then that's your life. And I didn't that didn't feel right for me.
mm,
I felt throughout a lot of like my grad school experience, throughout learning how to be a therapist was that yes, there's definitely like theoretical things that we have to follow, ethical things we have to follow. There's all of those things and absolutely they have like framed the profession. And there's a lot of room that I think we can push on that as therapists to actually modernize mental health and start to like bridge that connection of your mental health is just your life. And what are you doing in your life? And how do you take care of it? I like to think of things as like short term and long term. Like, what are you doing in the short term and what are you doing in the long term to maintain your life? How do we actually like bring these things closer to you and already like what are you already doing in your life? Because people get through and cope all day long. People are coping all the time. And people are doing things all the time in their life that are helping them. They just don't know why. And when we can make some like tweaks and intentions and kind of like supercharge things that people are already doing, then it can really help their life without feeling like something's wrong with them or that they have to go somewhere else to help themselves. So I really like I wanted to bridge that together. And I really wanted to start working with people in a way of like, hey, I'm just another human. Like I want to show up to therapy in a hoodie and I'm not going to do my makeup all the time because like I'm not any better than you. And I didn't like that. I didn't like that like hierarchical kind
Mm.
of stuffiness. Like you have to go somewhere for someone to tell you what to do differently in your life because you're so bad at living it. And I didn't like that. That never sat right for me. I was like, mm-mm, like you know your life best. I'm here to just kind of help guide you along. And I'm just another human that knows some things and has a piece of paper. But I'm not here to tell you how to live your life or not. And I think that was really what I wanted to break down. I wanted to be like, I'm another human and let's see what you're already doing and let's see how we can make that better for you if that's what you want. And that really was like what helped me because I I had one experience before my early 20s where I went to therapy. It was just one time and it was very stuffy and
Mm.
hierarchical. And it was like, you're doing all these things wrong and you're not doing this and you're not doing that. And I was like, I don't want to be anywhere near somebody like that again. That's going to like just kind of demean you. And I think a lot of people have that experience in therapy is they feel like they have to someone else knows their life better than them. They have to go to someone else to tell them what to do. And I never felt right with that. So that's really how I wanted to break it down. And then my discovery of learning that about myself helped me, I think, do it for other people is to like break down these big concepts. Like I'm not going to use big jargon words in my therapy sessions. I'm not going to drop all of this stuff because that's not relatable for people. And I found that people actually really started to connect more when we just kind of kept it real.
And do you think this is why there's such a disconnect with therapy or maybe taboo? I definitely think there's been such a progression where it's more normalized for people to go to therapy, speak about therapy. But do you believe that this is one of the reasons there is such a disconnect? Because I definitely resonate with you. The first time I ever went to therapy, very, very early 20s, the first session I left and I was like, why does everyone say this helps? This was stupid. This was fucked. Like it's I felt and the exact thing that you said, it was like someone was on a pedestal above me and then there was me and it's like you're doing this wrong. You're it was after my mum passed away. So it's like this is what you're doing wrong with grief. This is how you're operating. And I left as a 20-year-old and I was like what did I just experience? And I didn't go back to therapy for years because all of a sudden it was tainted for me. And I love the way you're describing it. It's like, let's normalize it in the fact like it is normal life. It is how we're operating. And every day we have these coping mechanisms and the things that we do. But do you think that we still have a long way to go when it comes to bridging that disconnect of making it more relatable, taking away having the therapist on a pedestal and kind of pointing like this is what you're doing wrong.
Yeah, I definitely do. I think that there is still a long ways to go. And I mean, when you look at obviously, like things are always changing all the time, but even for therapists, like we weren't even really allowed to be on social media until like 5 or so years ago. It was like taboo and it's like unethical and all these things. And it's just like, what is, I don't really know what that's about or where that came from. And I think because, really therapy is rooted in a bunch of white dudes that created all these theories about white dudes. And so it's very patriarchal.
Mm.
It's very like rooted just in things that don't make sense for a lot of people. And so what like these ethical guidelines around, I have to show up a certain way and I have to withhold this status and I have to withhold that I'm this person, with all this education and knowledge and I know better than you. And I think that it is rooted in a lot of those like racist terms, a lot of patriarchal terms, gendered terms, like a lot of those systems of oppression exist in the psychology and therapy world. And so when we look at how that also intertwines in all of it around this idea of status and power. And when we're breaking that down as like the modernized therapists are doing and actually talking about like what people need to heal, what people actually need to feel safe and how we have to show up in that room because it's not helpful like the experience that you had, the experience that I had to go into a therapist room and feel like you're less than and
Mm.
feel like what you're doing in your life is wrong, even though that's the first time you're navigating that ever. How are you supposed to know what to do? And there isn't any supposed to do, you know? There's no 1 through 5 stages of grief. We bounce around all the time. And so I think there definitely is a long ways to go. I think we're chipping away at it, but that's like a huge mindset that I have is, really bridging that gap. Because when we look at, access to therapy, and I'm not sure what it's like in Australia, but in Canada, we have, the public healthcare system
Mm.
where you can go and access free therapy, but you're going to sit on a wait list for up to a year. Then you probably only have a certain amount of sessions that you're allowed. So maybe 6, maybe 8. You probably aren't allowed, you have to have a diagnosis, you have to, like, have all these things, you have to jump through these hoops, you have to sit and emerge. That's your option, or you can pay for private because our healthcare has an adopted therapist as something they wanna put in the healthcare. So then you have to pay $200 for 50 minutes for 1 session, and benefits are only gonna cover $600 a year. So when we look at it structurally, it's like, "Oh, okay, so this is a privileged space. You only want privileged people to be able to access this kind of support." And what does that say? What does that say for, like, the profession in general, right? It's really hard to access, and what does it say for therapists themselves that are also trying to earn a living of, like, "I have to charge this amount of money because 'cause I'm worth that amount of money." And yes, you have a master's degree, you're very knowledgeable, but how does that intertwine into how I view the people I work with, right? So, like, there's a lot of walls to still break down when it comes to accessing therapy, having therapy. What are even your options? Because for a lot of people, one-to-one therapy is the only option. How is that our only option? If you wanna heal, you have to just do one-to-one therapy,
Mm.
you know? Or it's like, there's not a lot of other things that we can do because it isn't that, like, infusion in your life still. It's, "Oh, you have something wrong with you," in quotations. "Go see somebody else that knows what to tell you what to do." And that feels icky.
I love that you brought this up. I don't know exact numbers, but the healthcare system in Australia is quite similar with the long wait lists, and it's the way you put it was perfectly quite privileged to be on this list and to have to wait. And at time of recording, I'm not sure if you guys over in Canada saw this, but at time of this recording, April 18th, there was an incident on the weekend in Sydney where a man, he went in a shopping center in Sydney, he stabbed 5 or 6 people, and it's come to the conclusion there's much more around it, but it's he had a mental illness. He wasn't able to have access quickly to being able to help himself, heal himself. Again, there's other attachments to it that most of the victims, 90% were women as well, but that's a different other topic. But what I want to highlight that's been highlighted with a lot of people in Australia that have spoken out about this overall is that our mental health system is fucked. It doesn't give access to people, even people with
Mhm.
privilege,
Yep.
even people who have private healthcare. When I was going to a therapist, I had private healthcare and I still had to wait. And thank God for me that it was just, I want to speak to someone. It wasn't like I need this life or death, but I still had to wait 9 months till I could get someone in my
Mhm.
area. Even someone paying for private healthcare, a top tier,
Yeah.
just so I could get that 60, 70% covered when I paid the full amount. And again, I think it was at the time, this was a few years ago, but for a 50-minute session, I think it out of pocket was like 210 Australian dollars. Then on my private
Wow.
healthcare, I could claim some of it back. But again, long wait list. And I think it's ridiculous. And you're right. What's the answer? We all have to wait around for one-on-one therapy. Why isn't it accessible? Why isn't there other modalities to make it easier for people to learn about themselves and to heal about themselves? And I feel I don't know about Canada, but I feel that there's been a lot of incidents in Australia over the past couple of years that are similar to what I just described. And a lot of it does, not that it's an excuse whatsoever, but a lot of it does come down to mental illnesses. And these
Mhm.
people, as they dive into their history or what's happening, have not been able to have access, can't afford the access.
Mhm.
And again, not an excuse for everyone listening because this is still very raw in Australia, but it makes me so sad. And I was actually thinking about it yesterday that why is this such a thing that is placed up here? And it seems like it's so far away, even in the progression of the world, even with people like you that are sharing beautiful modalities in the way that you teach for people to heal. One of my close friends, she's American, she's a therapist, she's a relationship therapist. And even I think of you guys sharing these ways of healing and looking after yourself. But again, why is it so far placed that it's almost this unattainable thing? But it's like everyone should go to therapy. Everyone should be looking after their mental health. If you are
Mhm.
experiencing this, you should do this. Okay, let's put you on a wait list for 12 months.
Yeah.
And I think it's ridiculous that this is happening. And I think it's sad for a lot of people that really need it. And we all need it to some degree, but the people that are like, I am struggling and I'm trying to seek help.
Yeah.
For those people that are listening, what would you say to them? Or where would you start? What are some things that you would start with? Because one thing I do love about your content is you give the things we're already doing. And it's like, let's tweak it a little bit. But you're already doing this. In some way, you're already healing yourself, or you already know where to tap into. Where can we start if
Mhm.
someone's listening right now and they're going through this period in their life where it's like things are overwhelming or things are a bit stressful or I'm just feeling completely dysregulated all of the time, work's piling up, the family, it like I can't deal with it. Where do we even start to get in tune with ourselves? Because I think again an underlining theme that I am perceiving from everything you do is like building that self trust, building that connection to self of how can I trust myself enough to know that I do have some things within me to start helping my own mental health, to start feeling that I'm connected to the world. And it's nothing is quote unquote wrong with me. I'm just experiencing this world in a lens that no one around me, none of my friends or my family are experiencing in that lens. Where do we start with that?
Yeah, totally. Well, I think it, definitely it can start in a lot of different areas, but recognizing that everything we do as humans is like an adaptation or a function of something we've been through. And so we learn and grow and learn how to protect ourselves in these different ways. So I think that is such a beautiful way in allowing ourselves compassion to be like, okay, there isn't anything wrong with me. I'm struggling. This is because of something I've been through. Always. It's always that. It's always an adaptation and a function to what we've been through. The thing that I like harp down the most with the people I work with and in the work that I do is building a relationship to ourselves. And we can do that in so many different ways through connection, through understanding, through awareness, through how we express. What do we connect to? I love connecting to like nature, to humans, to animals, to self-expression. What are we doing that makes us feel good? And that's something that I ask my clients a lot. What do you do that feels good? Because a lot of the time it's like, "Oh, well, I'm not doing therapy things." And I'm like, "Well, what the fuck are therapy things?
Mm.
What is that, like, deep breathing in a corner meditating?" Like, not everyone likes that, and if that's your vibe, that's awesome. But I like to roll down the windows and scream my punk rock music, and people will tell me that, and they'll be like, "But that's not really therapy." I'm like, "No, it is. It
Mm.
is. That is. Like, that's awesome. Do that, and keep doing that because it's helping you. Now let's figure out why. What are you connecting to, right? So, like, I think people, when they can reflect on what are you doing that's already helping you? What makes you feel alive? What gives you euphoria? What are you like, oh, that was so much fun? What do you do when you're sad? What do you do when you want to get out of your head? Where do you go? And like people will tell me, oh, well, I like to, go sit. in the grass and just like sit there and close my eyes. Perfect. Let's go do that. But then let's do that and then let's boost it with an intention of like, I'm taking time for myself. I'm going to close my eyes and I'm going to try to identify all the things I can hear. And I'm going to feel the wind and I'm going to feel the sun or I'm going to listen to the birds and like let it just get in you. Let it just marinate in you and see and feel it. And when we can do those kinds of things and amp them up, then it's like, oh, okay, this is something that's helping me. This is something I'm connecting to. It is fun to like plan a date night or a fun something with your friend and go try new restaurants. That is therapeutic. You're getting out, you're connecting, you're having fun with your friends, you're trying new foods. It's like I think we've overemphasized what therapeutic is or like what therapy is. And sure, there is an aspect of like you need to learn about yourself and learn why you do things and understand. And there's some like really cool skills we can teach you. But at the same time, we're all human beings that love to connect and experience the world. We all want to feel seen and validated. And we all want to feel connected to ourselves in some way, shape, or form, right? Every human is creative. Every human is musical. Every human can connect to that side of them. But what happened with our world is judgment and capitalism and sexism and all those things that came in that said, oh, you look that way, you need to go do this. Oh, you are that gender, you need to go do that. Oh, you're this, that's what you should be. And we got put into all of these boxes. And coming out of that box felt so scary. What would people think of me? What are their opinions? What are their thoughts? What if I don't do it good enough? What if I can't do this good enough? But the thing about being a human is it's not about being good enough. It's about connecting to ourselves. It's about expression. It's about identifying who we are. It's about doing the things that make us happy, doing the things that bring us joy, doing the things that let us feel emotions. But the judgment and the criticism and the belittling and the intense systems in our world have put a lot of people in these boxes and we're scared, so scared to come out of them. And in that box, we're not feeling what it's like to be a human. We're losing all that disconnection from things that really bring us a lot of joy and bring us a lot of like sense of self, identity, right? And I think again, connecting that to music is why music can help us feel that way because it's a body's actual reaction. We're actually getting surges of dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin. Our brain's taking us back there. And that's something that will just happen. And that's why people are like, oh, that's why that feels so good. Yeah, it's because our body just takes control. And when our body takes control in that way, when it feels good, it feels euphoric and healing. But it's our brains that are always trying to shut down what's going on in our body. And that's when we can get really tripped up is when we think about, oh, maybe singing and dancing would be really fun, but what are people going to think? And what are people going to say? And what will they think about me? And what are they going to comment? What are they going to say to their friends? I won't do it. And we get caught up in that.
I think it almost seems simple, right? And I'm sure that there are going to be people who listen to this and cognitively they start to reject what you're saying because it's like, well, that almost seems too simple. It almost seems
Mm-hmm.
like what, find something that makes me feel good. And it reminds me of a conversation I had with one of my business clients this week. And we were talking about what are you actually doing in your business right now? She's feeling a bit burnt out, but what are you actually doing that's inspiring? And she was just looking at me on the Zoom call and she's like, I actually don't know what I'm doing that's inspiring in my business. And I was like, there, that's why you end every
Mm-hmm.
week resentful and you're feeling burnt out. It's because you're not doing something or anything that is inspiring to you in your business. And I'm sure that's now flowing onto your personal life. And I was thinking of that as you were speaking because it's in those moments we have this all within ourselves. It's like, what does make me feel good? Yeah, is it sitting on the grass and just feeling something that I absolutely love doing is just sitting on the balcony when the sun's there, doing nothing. The sun's just on me and it makes me feel so good. Or screaming a song, the top of my lungs in my car. And it almost seems too simple because I agree, we've kind of been brought up in this world where it's like, well, okay, you're just doing those things, but why don't you actually go see a therapist? Or like, you need to do that, or there's certain things a therapist is going to teach you. Why do you think we have this perception that these things are wrong in quotation marks in comparison to let's book in that therapist appointment and that's going to make things right?
Mhm. I think people want other people to come and save them. And I say that with so much compassion because I understand what it's like to be there. And people get into this mindset of, I'm only this way because of something. I'm only this way because someone burned me or my parents fucked up
Mm,
or I had this happen to me. And they think that therapy is going to solve that.
mm,
I have so many people come to me and just go, just tell me why, like, just tell me what to do. I can't really do that. And people get really tripped up in that idea of no one's coming to save you. It's you that's coming to save you. And they're like, what? I can't do that. I don't want to do that. I want you to tell me what to do. And a comment that I get from people often when I talk about this kind of stuff is they go, oh, yeah, like that's going to solve my childhood trauma. And I'm like, okay, yes, there's the wound coming out,
mm.
right? And I understand that and I get it. And I say, no, this isn't going to solve your childhood trauma. But what are you doing in your life to sustain your life? And that's there really is, there's the aspect of it I kind of just spoke really quickly about of yes, there is an aspect of like learn about why you are the way you are. Absolutely.
Mm,
How did your shitty parent fuck you up?
mm,
Yeah. How did they make you think that you're a piece of shit? How did they make you think that you were not good enough? And how you speak to yourself and treat yourself. Why do you hold yourself back? Yeah, let's figure that out. But there's a difference between knowing who we are and knowing why we are the way that we are, and then what we're doing about it.
Amen to that.
Because,
Amen to that. Mic
yeah.
drop. I just like amen, bold, italicized, underline. I agree. I love that. Yes. Sorry to interrupt, but I
Mhm.
was like, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, right? I know. I feel that so much too. I'm like, you can know everything about yourself. You can know why you are the way you are, and a lot of people do. It's the what are you doing about it, and how are you actually putting change into your life? Because doing the things, going for a drive, listening to music, being in nature, connecting to yourself, expressing, going to get your favorite coffee and like romanticizing it. That kind of shit is what you have to do in your life to sustain it. And so, no, listening to music isn't going to solve your childhood trauma. But how are you coping with the shit that happened to you?
Mm,
How are you getting through life? How are you letting music and expression allow to get in your body and move and shift that energy around? How are you getting yourself out of a dissociated slump when you can't get off the couch? Because just thinking about it or criticizing yourself ain't going to get you off the couch. But if you put on that nostalgia playlist and all of a sudden you hear like Kesha or you hear like My Chemical Romance or something, you're like, okay, yes, I can do this. I can do life. Right. So that's what I love to help people bridge is like, okay, we can talk all day long about how your parents screwed you up. We can talk all day long about how that relationship you were in made you feel less than and affected your self esteem. But what are you doing about it? How are you building the relationship to yourself back up? How are you showing yourself that you deserve to have fun, that you deserve to heal, that you deserve to express, that you deserve to live in your life, not just a bystander of it? What are the things that you're doing? And a lot of the time people are like, well, nothing. I
mm,
just want it to change. Knowing something won't make it change. It's not just going to magically switch tomorrow. We actually have to do it. And so I think that's the disconnection that people have a lot of the time is that they go, oh, well, going for a coffee isn't going to help anything. Well, and go, well, let's supercharge going for that coffee. And let's actually maybe journal 5 things that you like about yourself before that coffee. And then you're going to walk and you're going to look at everything and you're going to notice and you're going to say hi to 2 strangers. and you're going to sit in that coffee shop and you're going to do something, like you're going to look at pictures or you're just going to observe people and you're going to drink it. What does it taste like? And what does it feel like? And what did you want that day? And then you're going to go home and you're going to relax or do whatever. And they're like, oh my God, that actually sounds so nice. I'm like, yeah, it does. Because you're connected to yourself. And so I think like people really underestimate the small things, but it's the small things that get us through our life. And so we have to supercharge them.
I love that, and it's so true. It's like you can, and I think a lot of people maybe pride themselves on being self-aware, and they know they know, I know what my mom did, or I know how my dad treated me, or I know that toxic ex from 5 years ago. I know what he did to me. I know this is why I don't connect with men, or whatever it may be. And I used to be one of these people, super self-aware. I know why I'm like this. I know why I'm avoidant. And I used to use mime. I think I definitely have a leg to stand on, and I've never really spoken about this. So this is definitely something new for me on any platform. But I think for a long time, I used the death of my mum as almost this excuse of, well, if things get fucked up, or I don't achieve, or if the world's hard, or if I push away another guy, poor me. Well, I lost my mum when I was 18. So of course this is going to happen to me. And I played in this, but
Mhm.
I'm self-aware. I know it's why I feel this abandonment room. I know it's why I feel like I don't deserve love. It's because my mum died. And I use that, whether I knew it consciously or not, for a long time. And the moment I started to actually heal and feel through that and ask myself that exact question, what am I doing about this then? Am I now I'm turning 31 in a month, and I had this realization maybe 6 years ago. Okay, so what am I doing? Is this Am I going to do this for the rest of my life? And at that point I was like, I want to start attracting someone into my life. I want to attract a partner, but am I going to be using these excuses all of the time? Like, this is just the way I am. You know, I'm
Mhm.
sure you hear that a lot, is well, it's just the way I am. This is who I am.
Yeah.
And I use that for a long, long time. And I see now, even a lot of people, whether it's grief, whether it's anything else that's happened, just use that as kind of like this placeholder. If something doesn't go to plan, or if something's not working out, well, of course it's not working out for me because XYZ happened 2 years ago, or back when I was 10 years old. And people don't want to admit that they have the power and they actually do have the control to change and to do something about it. And I think there is so much power. And I just absolutely am resonating with this, of what you said, is like, do something. Like, what are you doing to help yourself? What are you doing with all this self awareness that you have? And are you continuously playing into the same story? It's crazy, isn't it? People want to change their life. They want a brand new story. They want to live differently, but every single day they play into the same story. Poor me,
Mhm.
or this happened to me, or like, but I'm self aware. So I am doing the work because I am self aware. And again, I say this with so much love to all the listeners because I've been there. I was there for many, many years. Like, I get this, I understand. I'm not disconnected from this at all, but I think there needs to come in time, if things aren't changing, or if you're feeling in the same cycles. And I'm sure you would agree, Nikki. It's like, okay, let's use all that self awareness. Yet let's use all that resentment that is bottled up, all those emotional charges, and let's transmute that into something that's going to change us. And it does start, like you said, go for a drive, go sing your favorite songs, go sit on the grass in the sun, go take yourself, promise yourself you're going to go on a coffee date once a week and do
Mhm.
that. And again, it goes back to what we said before this, is people will some people may disconnect from this and disregard because it's almost too simple to start. And it's like they need this big thing that's going to come save them, a therapist, a person they fall in love with, a new friend to come and save them. Why do you think we look for people to save us rather than saving ourselves?
I think for a lot of people, it is a wound. And a lot of us have wounds and emotional injuries from when we were kids, youth, adolescents. And in that time period, it is our parents' job to, quote unquote, save us, quote unquote, help us, get us through that. And if we had parents that didn't show up for us, weren't there, passed away, couldn't show up for us, then we almost like develop this wound of like, I'm not savable, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy enough. But we have this yearning of wanting it because it's like, it's rooted and grounded in, I deserve more. And you did deserve more. The people do deserve more. They deserved caregivers and parents and families to be there. And unfortunately, when that doesn't happen for a lot of us, I'd say for, everybody, because your parents can't meet all of your needs 100%. We kind of take that into our adulthood. And people really struggle with the shift from like late adolescence, early 20s to adulthood because there does become a lot of shifts that have to happen. You have to start showing up for yourself. And that involves doing a lot of grief work. How do I grieve that no one saved me? How do I accept that no one saved me? And that wasn't because I wasn't good enough. It wasn't because I didn't deserve it. It was because that was what happened. That was the situation. The parent was struggling. The parent wasn't there. Something happened. And we internalize and personalize the things that happen to us as our innate issue. It's because I'm just not good enough, or I have this wound, or it'll never change. And when we shift into adulthood, we have to also step into those shoes of like, I'm the adult, I'm the person coming to save me, I'm the healed person coming to save me. And you can like pick up, of course, like bits and pieces of what people can help you and tell you and role model for you. But ultimately, you have to show up for you, right? And we know in therapy, like the two biggest indicators of change is relationship, but also now what's gotten more is your willingness to show up and change. You have to be willing to do it. And do we get stuck in that? Yes. But I always like to rephrase, we're never actually stuck anywhere. We're choosing something.
Mm.
And when we feel stuck, it can be we're choosing to be comfortable. We're choosing to be safe emotionally, physically. We're choosing to be loyal. We're choosing to be dutiful to something. And that actually, a lot of people can be like, oh, I'm not choosing to stay here. It can like really offend them. And that's okay. That makes sense. Where I like to take it to is then actually that choice gives us more access to compassion and
Mm.
movement because we understand, oh, I'm staying here because doing that thing is really hard and I'm afraid of what other people will think of me, or I'm afraid of what that would look like. And being here and being safe actually feels a bit more comfortable for me. It's like giving people autonomy and choice back. Don't give don't give your autonomy and choice of who you are as a human to the external factors of the
Mm.
world. Keep that to yourself, but allow compassion as to why you're choosing to be where you are. And know that stepping into like our adult shoes to be like, I'm the one that has to do this now. It's really hard. It's extremely hard. It feels unfair. It feels like someone else should have done that for you because guess what? Someone else should have done that for you. And maybe they didn't. And now we have to learn how to feel that and accept that and take that power back to go, okay, I'm in charge now. I got to go back and do some healing. I got to go back and figure it out. I got to go back and build a relationship to myself. Because for a lot of us, the relationship we built to ourselves was built off of a lot of external factors, was built off a lot of traumas, a lot of things that happened to
Mm.
us. But again, like when we're talking about music and how our brain is developing and it's like a fireworks show, our identity, our sense of self is forming. That's also a hard part of our identity and sense of self forming in those years.
Mm.
Because if we go through hard things in those years, that can feel like it gets cemented into us. And I love to help my clients understand like we are always going to be informed by and changed by our past, but do not let our past cement into who we are today and who we're going to be in our future. Because at any point in our life, we can take the power to change it. We just have to figure out, why is it so damn comfortable where we are?
Mm.
And how can we actually equip ourselves to move forward and move through it and show up for ourselves? And showing up for ourselves does mean taking care of ourselves, the relationship to ourselves, the connection we have to ourselves, the connection we have to our expression, people in our life, nature, what we're doing, how we have enjoyment, all of those things. Those things are really like a lot of foundations of our life that we, I guess, take for granted or just
Mm.
think that they're too simple, right? And I think a lot of the time we want to have this like savior complex come. We want to have this big therapist tell us exactly how to live our life. We want someone else to come in and save us. But recognizing that we are the ones that have to actually do that work. And if we break it down, we can start smaller, because people want to go from "I hate myself" to "I love myself," or "I can't stop beating myself up" to "I want to stop self-sabotaging tomorrow." And I'm like, what? That bridge doesn't exist. Like, we just can't cross that by tomorrow. We have to start really small, but people want results right now. And it's really hard to invest in the little things, invest in the little challenges, think about how we actually show up to ourselves every day. That's where the foundational work is. That's where you're going to start to feel a lot of shifts and movement.
You posted a TikTok, and I think it's on your Instagram, about perfectionism. I think this weaves in perfectly with what you were just saying. So if someone's listening, they're like, okay, I'm getting on board now, but the perfectionist in me wants to get it right. What do you say to them?
Mhm. Oh, perfectionism. It is a dirty little gremlin. I think that's actually what I probably put in my caption too, because perfectionism really is rooted in wounds and how and who we think we have to be. It's based in how other people are perceiving us,
Mm.
but ultimately it's based in our relationship to ourselves. And perfectionism is always going to look for the story that confirms it. It's never going to look for the things that go against it, because it wants to prove itself right. Perfectionism is another like protector. It's a protector of pain. If we just do it a certain way, then everything will be Gucci. It won't suck. It'll be fine. No one will even say anything about us if we look a certain way, do it a certain way, have a certain way, show up perfectly. Then no one will think anything of us. It's protecting. It wants to protect us from that pain. But what it does is actually keep us from living, because we can't live in a world of perfect. It doesn't exist. But it tries to make us think that it does. Perfectionism has to be exposed with the most compassion and care and understanding in the world. But perfectionism will not go away by just wishing it well. It won't go away because we want it to. It won't go away because we don't like it anymore. It needs exposure. It needs understanding. It needs intentional action to do things kind of in that opposite way. So when I think about, the people that are like, okay, maybe I'll start to do this, but perfectionism, start with just thinking about it. What would it be like to do this? What would it be like to not engage in it in that perfect way? And the thing with perfectionism is, when we're thinking about it, when we're journaling it, when we're doing it, it's not about avoiding the hard things. It's actually going right into the hard things. So, what would it be like for someone to judge me? How would it feel for someone to see me without makeup on, or imperfect, or dancing and singing in my living room? What if someone saw me through the mirror or through the window? Yeah, what if someone saw you? What would that be like? And then how do we deal with that? What does that feel like? What does it make you think? What does it make you want to do? Okay, well, let's just sit with that and do the opposite. How do you do something caring to yourself? How do you do something nurturing to yourself? How do you do something that you really like and enjoy? And so instead of running away from everything that scares us, we go into it. And that's how we actually build a relationship to ourselves that's full of compassion, nurturing, understanding, instead of running away and avoiding and wanting someone else to fix it for us.
I love that. And I think that's going to help So many people who are listening who are struggling with that inner gremlin, as you say, of I must do everything perfect. But it's true. It's like just observe. And I guess it's with any fear of judgment, success, or failure, what actually happens if you do experience that? If you do fail, the worst case scenario, okay, hold that in your head and ask yourself, then what? What would I do? Where would I go? And I
Mhm.
think that's a very powerful thing. But again, a big theme in all of this conversation is like such powerful, potent modalities that are so simple yet effective. And I think a lot of people reject these because it's almost too simple. It's almost
Mhm.
too obvious to do these things and to capitalize on these things. But I think for everyone listening is like start small. Start with these small modalities and the things you're already doing that make you feel really good. And I just want to highlight what you said, Nikki, about do the things that make you feel good, that light you up, that inspire you, and keep doing them. And there's no reason not to. There's no reason not to engage in them. And I think that people want to almost think that, well, I can't feel good all of the time, or I can't be in this place where I'm healing myself if people have it worse, or I've experienced worse. And I think don't do yourself a disservice, but instead give yourself so much love to experience this and experience the small things of joy, like in your car screaming out your favorite R&B song and being able to feel how good and euphoric, that's the perfect word for it, euphoric. I completely agree. I've loved this entire conversation. I think it's been very powerful. I think so many people who are listening to this right now have taken notes probably and nodding their head and like, yep, I need to action that. Yep, that resonates with me.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I get to the end of any podcast interview, I have a kind of a list of questions and I choose one very random, sometimes not related, if not ever related to what we're speaking about. And I'm going to choose one at random for you. And I would love to hear your answer. And I'm just kind of looking, what would I love to answer? Okay. What fictional world, book, movie, or game would you most like to live in and why? What role would you play in that world?
Ooh. Oh my gosh, that's such a good question. I mean, I love so so many fictional worlds. I think they're so fun. Another way to kind of like escape
Mm.
from. But I'm gonna go with Harry Potter.
Oh, good. I would have said that too. Good answer. You
Yes.
love Harry Potter.
Yes.
Another reason. Love this. Okay, who would you play and
Hmm.
why?
Oh man. Oh, who would I play? Okay. I would play I'm like leaning towards Hermione because I
Mm.
love her vibe, but I also like love Professor Snape. Even
Mm.
though he's like, he's kind of like standoffish and things, but he was like the mastermind behind everything. And he was like
Mm.
such an important character. And I also love Sirius Black because I would just love to be
Yeah.
able to transform into a werewolf. So
Yeah.
I just said three answers, but I feel like I'm a bit of a vibe of all of them.
I love that. There is actually, I'm not sure if he's, I think she's American by her accent on TikTok, but she has gone super viral. She's reading Harry Potter for the first time. I think she's late 20s. I'll have to send you her late 20s or maybe in
Yeah.
her 30s. I could be getting that wrong, but it's Harry Potter for the first time. She has no idea what's happening. Her reactions are hilarious. I will send you the link to one of her most viral videos. And when she finds out, and spoiler alert for anyone, but I feel like everyone should be watching Harry Potter by now. One of her funniest videos was when she found out that Ron's rat was a human and made a pedigree. And her reaction, I'll send you that one, was just hilarious. But I love that answer. I would have said Harry Potter straight away. And
Hmm.
yeah, a combination of all of those characters. That was a great
Hmm.
answer. Thank you
Yeah.
so much, Nikki, for all of this wisdom and for just really bringing your beliefs that I believe are helping the world and going to help the people that are listening. Where can everyone find you, inquire to work with you, or learn more about what you do?
Yeah. Again, thank you for having me. I love this conversation. It was so much fun. And people can find me on TikTok or Instagram, both at Nikki Roy Collection. And I have like a little link in my bio if you want to work with me, if you want to chat with me. I also created the Wellness Club, which is like an educational platform, but also like interactive. It's really rooted in like sustainable long-term mental health. I like teach about everything. We talk about like barriers, all the stuff. It's beautiful. I love it so much. It's like where my passion is right now. Really like what we talked about, like another option other than one-to-one. Come
Mm,
and learn about yourself, learn at your own pace, learn about the things and why you are the way you are and what you can do. So yeah, TikTok, Instagram, link in my bio if you want to chat with me. And then also if you want to talk about the Wellness Club, I'm there. I'm there for you. So I'm excited for this to
incredible.
come out
Me
and thank you
too.
for
I'm
having
so
me.
excited. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you so much. And all of those details will be in the show notes below for everyone. And thank you. This was such an important conversation. I feel that whoever is listening has needed it in the perfect divine timing. And I appreciate you. I appreciate your time and everything you brought onto this episode. And I will speak to you soon.
Okay. Sounds good. Have a great day.